So, Donald Trump's tariffs. For God's sake, don't watch the Australian media if you want to actually understand what might be going on. I'd be surprised if there are more than a handful of people in all our newsrooms combined who actually get it. Which would be fine if they weren't all acting like they know everything and reporting on it with a condescending tone of, Trump's just an idiot. Instead, and I'm looking right at you, aging ladies of the ABC editorial class, how about showing some humility and just reporting the news? Okay, tell us what's going on instead of giving us your verbal or non-verbal opinion. And no, the 90-day pause is not a backflip or a U-turn. I'm so sick of the media. Oh, he's done a backflip. Oh no, good God. So here's an idea for a change. How about showing us some of the people who are actually behind crafting this whole thing and actually shut up and let them explain it? Like, for example, Donald Trump's senior trade and manufacturing advisor, Peter Navarro, a guy I don't always agree with, probably don't totally agree with on this issue. But everybody knows that free trade is best for economic efficiency. Everybody wants free trade, but it's got to be fair. Trump's team want these tariffs because we don't have global fair free trade at the moment, because so many countries, one in particular, by the way, that we should be more worried about than we are cheating the system. This is a point that Peter Navarro explained this week in an interview on the US business channel CNBC.
Let's not lose sight of the big picture. We got a $1.2 trillion trade deficit this year. We have since the trade war began, when the world declared war on us back in 1979, we've accumulated $18 trillion of money we've had to transfer into foreign hands. That's about 2/3 of an annual GDP. That is totally unsustainable. And what we need to be able to do is stop that for our national security, our economic security. And the way to do that is to get our manufacturing back. And that's what we're all about.
So it's about truly leveling the playing field, which many Americans feel has been stacked against them for too long.
What we have here is a national emergency based on massive chronic trade deficits caused by systematically higher tariffs and non-tariff barriers. So when you ask if we're willing to negotiate, the president will always listen. But let's understand what the problem is. When you have a country like Vietnam, let's take Vietnam. When they come to us and say, we'll go to zero tariffs, that means nothing to us because it's the non-tariff cheating that matters.
Right. So what does he mean by non-tariff cheating? Well, a country can have officially zero tariffs, right? But then they have other trade barriers like currency manipulation, like China has been doing. They control their currency value, so they just manipulate it, right? Special subsidies to certain industries and to labour generally. Europe's VAT is a kind of barrier. Our GST is a kind of barrier. Australia is sometimes a little suspiciously over the top on biosecurity restrictions, right? It's these things that Peter Navarro told CNBC that America feels it's got to push back against.
They all cheat us in a different way. So here are the things they cheat us on. Some of them engage in currency manipulation. Some of them have a hefty VAT tax. All of them dump into our markets. All of them engage in heavy export subsidies and government subsidies. All of them put up these phony technical and phytosanitary barriers to our ag products and our autos and everything in between. Many of them steal our intellectual property. A lot of them run sweatshop labor, including forced child labor. They have pollution havens. So when you say to me, Ed, what do we want from them? We want fairness. We don't want them to kill American workers by inundating us with this non-tariff cheating. And it would be really refreshing to have the media talk more about that.
Yes, it would. All of these things were factored into the special formula that Trump's team used to come up with their tariff calculations, trying to measure what other countries are really charging America in their view. Now, another mastermind of Trump's tariffs is the US Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. He went on CNBC the next day and defended the formula that they used after it copped widespread criticism.
The academic literature shows that it's actually the non-tariff barriers, which are both harder to quantify and harder to, they're more insidious because they're hidden, they're obfuscated. So tariffs, non-tariff barriers, currency manipulation, and then subsidies to both labor and industry. So everything's on the table.
Secretary Bessent says the calculations were then, wait for it, halved to get the reciprocal tariff rates that Trump's imposing in response. Halved specifically to ensure that the approach was fair and was beyond criticism.
By cutting it in half, then we have shown some willingness. President Trump believes in trade. He wants to have fair trade for the U.S. I wasn't involved in the calculations of the numbers, but what I can tell you is that we can see from these huge surpluses that some of these countries have, that they've accumulated these gigantic surpluses over the years. That has to tell all of us that there are imbalances, and President Trump is committed for the American worker to fixing those imbalances.
That's Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, their equivalent of a treasurer, Scott Bessent, on CNBC this week. So what about the wild ride on the stock markets that we saw? Well, I've got to say, I've never seen in my life so many lefties so concerned about Wall Street's well-being before. Trump derangement syndrome is truly a real phenomenon. I even heard Aussie financial commentator Peter Switzer on 9 Radio this week saying that the billionaire donors to Trump will be very upset about these tariffs. Oh dear, we wouldn't want that. A politician actually doing what he believes is right on principle and upsetting the big billionaire donors. Oh, that's terrible. I mean, it's just hilarious how the left have reacted to all of this. Peter Navarro told CNBC that when the benefits are felt, the markets will recover. They bounced back the day after he did this interview. And then they bounced back, of course, when they announced the 90-day pause. They did that historic leap back up. But what Navarro says is that critics of the Trump tariff strategy are missing the point that very big tax cuts are coming, which will help deal with any inflation and stop any long-term dip in consumer confidence.
The biggest tax cut in American history, the broadest base tax cut in American history, is coming within a matter of months. So any discussion of recession seems silly when you factor that in. This is all about people worried about global recession. That's what they're worried about. The restructuring that's going to happen, Joe, globally is going to start with China and Vietnam and Germany, heavily export-dependent countries. They're going to have to engage significant fiscal stimulus to reorient their economy. So that thing is going to go on. In the meantime, we're going to boom bigger. Every dollar that we extract from foreigners who are cheating us is going to go to the American public in the form of debt reduction and tax cuts, including, for example, in our auto industry. Anybody who buys an American-made car is going to get a healthy tax cut.
Now, look, you might completely disagree with this entire strategy and approach, and that's fine. Lots of conservatives, classical liberals, and libertarians are very concerned about any time governments step in and start imposing tariffs. But you can't say that these people don't have a plan or that they are dumb and acting in a knee-jerk fashion. Our media need to do a better job of explaining and analysing all of this stuff instead of just taking the easy way out and playing the Trump is a fool card. How many times does Trump have to prove people wrong before they start maybe giving him the benefit of the doubt, before they jump to judgment? There is another factor to all of this, which is of critical importance to Australia because it impacts our national security. We don't know how militarily aggressive China might become in the coming years. Hopefully they won't do anything stupid. Now that there's a clear, full-on trade war between the US and China, and they've got 125% tariffs being thrown at each other, there is a threat that China might perhaps blockade Taiwan. The semiconductors won't be able to get out of Taiwan and get to America, in which case you're going to see big trouble. So this could all escalate, but hopefully it won't. But if it did escalate, or even if it didn't escalate and then eventually China decided, 2027, as some people are predicting, they're going to move on Taiwan, we need the United States to be strong and come to our defense. Bringing manufacturing back home to America has a serious national security element to it for them and us.
The president has said early and often that the best way to avoid tariffs is to just come here and produce. I mean, if you look at our auto industry, right? We're an assembly line for German engines and transmissions right now. That just doesn't make any sense. In World War II, we won that war with our so-called arsenal of democracy. We can't do that anymore. We've got parts all spread all around the globe, and if COVID taught us anything, those supply chains are not resilient. They're not reliable.
Right. Now, some people are saying, oh, you'll never be able to bring manufacturing back to America. Well, maybe it'd be a fairer world if China was actually forced to pay its workers as much as we and the Americans are. It'd be nice if labour unions around the world actually fought for wage equality globally instead of punishing the rich countries that have high wages. If they went after countries exploiting workers a little more, perhaps, countries making free trade very unfair, that'd be good. People also say that if America starts manufacturing again, it's going to take years to get the factories producing. But Peter Navarro has also hit that criticism on the head, telling CNBC that he thinks America can get manufacturing back up and running very fast when there's an incentive to do so.
I remember what I did working in the pandemic, and we were looking at PPE, N95 masks that were going to take 6 months to get factories done. You know, did it in 2 months. GM got us ventilators in 14 days. So don't tell me that America doesn't have the wherewithal to move things. We can do stuff.
So there's a heck of a lot more to all of this than just, oh, free trade's better for everyone, so tariffs are always bad. Actual free trade is better. Cheating is not. This is about fixing the cheating and ensuring American taxpayers get a better deal. You can't blame Trump for that. It's totally consistent with all of his other strategies, and he fully disclosed that he was going to do this long before the election that put him back into office. So why this is all such a surprise baffles me. Americans are fed up. Get the message, folks. They are fed up with the globalized world order, and they want their sovereignty back. They don't want to be spending their tax money on everybody else's problems. Trading with countries that pay workers peanuts simply isn't fair. And if leftists still actually cared about workers and wages and conditions, they would be applauding this stuff, not criticising it. But again, they're blinded by Orange Man bad and Trump derangement syndrome. So where to from here? Well, Treasury Secretary Bessent said on Tuesday that Trump was deliberately in quiet mode, waiting for the effect of his Liberation Day announcement to sink in and for countries to come to him to negotiate. Now he's shifted to a formal, after the bond market absolutely crapped itself the other night. On Wednesday, Trump said, OK, we're going to have a formal 90-day freeze on those bigger reciprocal tariffs. The 10% basic tariff, still there on everyone except Mexico and Canada. He's taken it off them. And China doesn't get the freeze at all because they retaliated aggressively to the original tariff announcement. In fact, as we said, Trump's raising levies on Chinese imports to 125%, and they're in a full-blown trade war. But Trump said that he decided to do the 90-day pause out of concerns about the economy. He said they were getting very yippy after the bond market crashed. He pointed out that somebody needed to take the steps that he took to rebalance global trade in America's favour, and he's right on that. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon went on Fox Business, because he knew Trump would probably be watching, on Wednesday morning, and he said a recession was the likely outcome of the new tariffs. But what you're not hearing people report is that Jamie Dimon defended the general idea of tariffs and the general idea of getting a better deal for America. And he urged President Trump to give Treasury Secretary Bessent time to make deals. The biggest deal of all is going to be the China one, and that's the one that'll have the biggest impact on us in Australia. Bessent is itching to do some deals.
I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth. President Trump is going to be personally involved in the negotiations, and we will see what our trading partners offer. As I said, many of our trading partners, they have queued up, and they have kept their cool. They have not escalated, and they will get priority in the queue. I think it was a big mistake, this Chinese escalation. We are the deficit country. So what do we lose by the Chinese raising tariffs on us? We export 1/5 to them of what they export to us. So that is a losing hand for them.
That's right. And it's about time someone took China on. Look, half a century ago, Richard Nixon, the president, and Gough Whitlam, the prime minister, both met with Chinese officials. It was the big opening up. It was the big sort of, we'll embrace you, we'll bring you into the normal world order, the normal trading environment of the world. We'll normalize relations. We'll get China because then they'll open up. Then they'll become democratic and less authoritarian, right? And they did for a little while. It was getting good there for a bit, and then it's all swung back under Xi Jinping, right, to authoritarian and totalitarian approach. So we have to stand up to that. We can't continue the way that we've been continuing. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, they're speaking to CNBC this week, and as I said, you might disagree with the Trump team's approach, that's fine, but I just wish commentators in the media in Australia would at least explain the stuff before they automatically jump on the bandwagon and criticise it. The other side doesn't get more than $1 billion of taxpayers' money to bring you news from a centre-right perspective like the ABC does to bring you news from a left-wing perspective. In fact, we don't get a red cent from the government. We need voluntary donors and supporters like you to keep going and growing. And we hate asking for charity, so we've done a deal with what we think is the world's best VPN, virtual private network service. It'll keep you and your family truly safe without slowing down your internet speeds, and you can watch Netflix or other streaming services using your regular accounts with them as if you're viewing from any country in the world. And you can sign up for less than $3 a month and get a whopping 83% off the normal price. Just go to piavpn.com/otherside to sign up and get more info. That's piavpn.com/otherside. That was a segment from a recent episode of our fortnightly news commentary show, The Other Side, with me, Damien Curry. If you liked it, support us. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube right now so you don't miss a thing. It's totally free. Just click that subscribe button and the little bell. And check out our Other Side Unplugged show too, and join our mission to actually do something and change Aussie media for the better at othersidetv.com.au. That's othersidetv.com.au. Check it out now.